Hello and welcome to a Showdown Breakdown Show Playoff Edition. My name is Adam Levitan, joined by the man who has dedicated his life, his pathetic life, to Showdown only, the very specific slate, of course, on DraftKings game format. Cody, peak Showdown virgin, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, Adam. It's been a fun weekend of wildcard football. We're going to close it out with a pretty awesome game here between the Rams and the Cardinals. So excited to get into it.
We have not done this show in a while for various reasons. The NFL has not complied. They did comply, though, with Cody in mind. Out of corporate greed, sole, unencumbered corporate greed, they decided not to do 2 3-game slates. Instead, 2 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday. And then for the Showdown Bros, for the peak advertising bros, Monday Night Football Playoff Edition. Cardinals and Rams, obviously, we have a huge sample on these two teams playing against each other, at least for the NFL, a big sample. Playing the same division, obviously play twice every year. Kyler Murray has not done well against the Rams historically. We can talk about that more in a second here. These games where we have a big sample, Cody, any takes you have on that or any general takes on this game from a macro perspective?
Yeah, it's the rubber match. This is the third time these teams will have played this year. We've seen some fireworks in the first 2 games going back and forth. So it is pretty interesting. I think we've got a lot of high ceiling options, 2 really strong quarterback plays, Cooper Kupp's salary that has seemingly finally gotten out of hand as he's crested the 13K mark, which is rarefied air in the Showdown territory. But it is an interesting slate just from the sense that as we look at roster construction utilization, in the chart below in the article, we're going to see a lot of Cardinals flooding their ways into lineups simply because of the way that they're priced. They're easier to fit. Kyler obviously is as strong, if not stronger of an option than Kupp after factoring in salary. So we're going to see a lot of Cardinals and their 3-point dogs tonight. So I think that's one interesting aspect just from the jump, that we're going to get a lot of these 2-4, two Cardinals, 2 Rams, 4 Cardinals lineups from the jump, so you can get interesting and get a little bit different by favoring that Rams side a little bit more. So that's kind of the jumping off point for me, just thinking through this thing from a macro sense. If the Rams take care of business and cover, go out and win at home, then I think we're going to want to favor that side a little bit more if the field is not going there already.
We typically have seen, and we've talked about this a lot, 2-4 construction. In other words, 2 from the underdog, 4 from the favorite, has provided a ton of leverage. And I've loved going with that. I'm sorry, 2 from the favorite, 4 from the underdog.
Mm-hmm.
I've loved going with that format just because, leaning into that nobody knows like how these NFL games are going to go from a script perspective. And a lot of these are based on script. From a salary perspective, what Cody is saying here is why we're going to get a lot more 2 favorite, 4 underdog tonight. Cardinals, of course, being the underdog. So 4 on the favorite side. It's just hard to fit with the Kupp stuff. And we'll get to that in a second here, but I think that's like a big part of what's skewing it, right? Is that everybody's going to try to play Kupp, and therefore they don't have any money left for Stafford or Sony or whoever else they want to play.
Right, and all of the value, it seems like, on this slate is on the Cardinals side. We've got a guy who we'll get to in a second, Antoine Wesley, who is extremely cheap, was not priced up after, showing some strong underlying metrics despite some box score struggles. And then you've got guys like Edmonds and Ertz and Kirk, who all look a little bit underpriced. So these are the type of guys that are going to find their ways into lineup alongside Kupp, and then it's just kind of about trying to make it fit from there. So we are going to see a lot of Cardinals in lineups tonight.
Injury news that we're watching, I think both Chase Edmonds and James Conner are going to be active and play, but we'll know for sure here in a few minutes. James Conner did get back into limited practice on Saturday. Chase Edmonds was practicing all week. You can make a case based on that Chase Edmonds is healthier, but we'll talk about that when we get to running back. I think an important part of the slate. It's been such a valuable position all year, has the Cardinals running back spot. Quarterback on this slate, 2 very good options, and I think you could argue 2 reasonably priced options. Kyler has certainly had his struggles against the Rams. That does not mean he will struggle tonight. It doesn't mean he still can't get there in fantasy thanks to his legs. But man, when your number 1 receiver is Zach Ertz and like your number 2 is Christian Kirk, okay, your number 3, now it starts to get hairy because the corpse of AJ Green and this dust ball Antoine Wesley is out there. You start to have problems, and like combine that with a scheme from Cliff, the fake sharp, which I don't think is a very sharp scheme from him. And it's just like all on Kyler to make plays. So I get why he's struggled a bit lately still at this price. Again, cheaper than Cooper Kupp, but he's at least interesting, if not really strong. What do you think about quarterbacks tonight? How often are you playing them together? And what about captain?
Yeah, I know you guys have talked about it a lot on the main slate shows, but this horizontal raid from Arizona has really limited Kyler's upside as a passer, and he hasn't been as willing. He's been a little bit more timid to run this season as well. And despite that fact, he still put up pretty strong fantasy performances. I think, especially just starting from a cash game perspective, you want Kyler tonight. That $11,200 price tag is really appetizing. We've seen it often in showdown slates, and we know that these guys are cheat codes when it comes to showdown when they've got the rushing upside, but we're consistently paying, 12,000, 12,500, even upwards of 13K for guys like Kyler and Lamar and Josh Allen, and these guys that have that rushing upside, that floor. So I think Kyler Murray is an absolute must in cash games tonight. He is going to be pretty popular at captain, and for that reason, if you think that this horizontal raid is not conducive to a ceiling game, I don't mind finding a fade there. But as we've talked about often, these quarterbacks and showdown slates, they're almost always at least one of them finding their ways into optimal lineups just based off the floor that the position provides. And even in absolute failure, points are coming from somebody. We have very limited options. So I think you're playing at least one of Kyler or Matthew Stafford in almost every tournament lineup. But yeah, as far as trying to find a captain fade on somebody who is going to be popular like Kyler, I think you can talk yourself into just this horizontal rate offense from Cliff just not being conducive to absolute ceiling games like we've seen from him in the past.
Yeah, Kevin notes that the Rams are missing both their safeties. I think people get too far into the weeds with this stuff, with defensive injuries and matchups and stuff like that, especially on Showdown. But I do think that it's at least worth mentioning that there's some more upside for Kyler. Rams are definitely down some of their better defensive backs. Let's go to the running back position here. So right now we are projecting both James Conner and Chase Edmonds in, and how they'll be used. Obviously, like what happened Sunday with Gio Bernard playing so much, with Jerick McKinnon playing so much. It's scary when these guys are coming off of injury, as James Conner is, and Chase Edmonds is too. But at least Chase Edmonds has been practicing all week, so obviously, I think that they both have chances at multiple touchdown games. I still think Conner will be the goal line back. I just don't see how Conner gets played a lot at 9,400 when he's so close to the quarterbacks and so close to Kupp. We do have the ownership here heavily in favor of Chase Edmonds, 32% on Chase, 19% on Conner. I could see that being even wider. But yeah, how are you handling these Arizona running backs, assuming they're both active?
Yeah, I agree with you on the ownership gap probably being wider. And that's one good macro point about this slate, too, that I forgot to bring up, is that this slate is really tightly priced. And we mentioned it with Cooper Kupp's price. Kyler's up there. We want to play Stafford. There's some wide receivers that we really want to play on the Cardinal side. We really don't have a ton of value. So it is going to be really, really hard to fit in Conner. I don't think people are going to be too excited to do that with a running back who doesn't add much through the air, a running back who now is going to be playing alongside Edmonds. That's the frustrating part is it makes him a strong showdown play. And the time to play these type of guys that are really relying on touchdowns is not when they're going to be popular, not when they're going to be played heavily, but when they're going to be pretty low owned, like we will see with Conner tonight. So I'm not fooling myself. I know that if I'm playing Conner, I'm really banking on probably 2 touchdowns. I don't think he's going to add much through the air. It might even be a grind to get there in the yardage total column. But yeah, if you think that Arizona finds success, if you think they find themselves in the red zone a couple of times tonight, we know Conner is going to get those touches as opposed to Edmonds. So he is certainly the play from that aspect. We haven't seen these guys share the field a lot this year. In fact, I think we go back to like weeks 1 through 8, where we had an extended sample of them playing alongside one another, and it went about as we would expect. Conner got a majority of the carries, a majority of the red zone carries, a majority of the carries near the goal line. And Edmonds was the clear pass catching specialist with like a 15% target share compared to just 2 for Conner. So very polar opposite type players. I don't know if I would be attempting to play them together in the same lineup, given the differing game scripts that they score well in. But Edmonds is certainly going to be the more popular of the two, with a cheaper price tag and the scoring that really sets up well on DraftKings.
Yeah, it's just a really tough spot because I don't want to pay 9,400 for Conner, but I don't want to run into the mega chalk with Chase Edmonds. And again, I think that we could be a little light, if anything, on Chase Edmonds' ownership here down at 5K. Let's go to the other side where we have some questions of our own. So Cam Akers came back last week. I didn't think he looked that good. They say they want to get him more work. I don't really know what to think at this point of Cam Akers. I think their best play is to play Sony Michel almost the whole game. The salary is way too tight here for my liking. Like I think that Sony should be priced way more than Cam Akers here. I think at the max he gets what he got last week. And in a worst case scenario, they look at the tape, they're like, my God, Cam was a mess. We can't play him in this playoff game. Maybe that's a bad take. Maybe they are going to extend Cam Akers' work. Any read on how much Cam Akers is going to play tonight? And what do you think about using him or Sony?
I'm with you. I know that they've said they want to get him more work, and maybe it's a ramp up throughout the rest of the postseason. But reading some of the articles that were posted today about his return to play and the Rams' data-driven approach to his return from injury and trying to balance the Achilles that he suffered just 5 months ago, it seems like they're going to be pretty smart with him and take some interesting approaches to keeping his energy output down still. So yeah, I mean, it's tough to play that guy at 6,600. Even if he runs super hot on touchdown efficiency, maybe he gets a short one. I think that the volume output just isn't going to be there. Handled like 24% of the team's rushing attempts last week. I think it's probably around that again, 24, 25, 26%. And it really sets up nicely for Sony, whose price didn't jump much at all last week. Now he's a 3-point home favorite against this Cardinals rush defense that has been okay. And I don't think that we're going to get too much ownership there on Sony with, kind of Cam Akers lingering in the background. So I like the Sony play quite a bit. I think, again, if anything, we might be just even a little bit heavy on his ownership too. So, captain, flex, I have plenty of interest in Sony tonight.
Yeah, that's interesting for sure. I think it's a pretty good spot for Sony in general. And like all these price points here, like the non-stars and scrubs, I think the stars and scrubs are going to be the most owned type of construction. These Sony types in the mid-range here are not going to be that owned. By the way, before we move on here, I'm sure some of you are wondering, where did Cody's sign come from? Because I went through hell and back to get my sign from Turkey. It took a while. There was a bit of a language barrier, but it got here. It's still, I think the sign looks great, but the overall setup, I think, could use some work. Cody shows up with this out of the stone cold blue. I had no idea. Why don't you tell the people what's going on with this sign in the background, Cody?
The whole genesis of the sign actually was brought on by your own sign. I was bragging about your sign from Turkey after I did a show with my wife, and I had the barren wall in the background. I literally looked like I was broadcasting from my mom's basement. So I told my wife, and as a Christmas gift, she told her father, my father-in-law. And having a father-in-law that works at a manufacturing plant who can just whip these up for free is turns out to be pretty handy. So. No going to Turkey, no Etsy, no dealing with letters falling off of my sign. This is American made.
Oh God. All right. Let's go to the wide receiver position. So, the roles for Odell and Van have not been great. By the way, Van had a shoulder issue. They gave him a scan, an MRI or whatever, came back clean. He's going to be out there. I do think it's worth noting, though, that he had at least some discomfort in his shoulder this week, did Van Jefferson. But yeah, I mean, the role for Odell has not, like, he's barely been separating from Van. And I know Odell has run super hot on touchdowns, and maybe that's just like what he does now. Odell just like scores touchdowns. He can't really break the slate in other ways. I will say that, again, these mid-range guys are not going to be that owned. Obviously, though, I'm bearing the lead. The lead is that Cooper Kupp, 13,000 DraftKings dollars to get Cooper Kupp tonight. It's just absolutely massive. I mean, what kind of game does Cooper Kupp need to be in the optimal at that price? And even like 10, let's say he gets like 9 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown, that's probably in the optimal. But at that price, I'm not sure it is. It depends how the punts go and how the quarterbacks play. So what do you think about using Kupp tonight at this tag?
Yeah, we've rarely seen this 13K plus price tag on showdown slates. Usually it's reserved for these guys like we talked about, like Kyler and Lamar and Josh Allen. Rarely do we ever see it for a wide receiver, and rarely does it even impact the ownership from the field. No one's scared off by the 13K price tag. In fact, on past showdown slates for players priced over 13K, we've seen them be 84% owned in the flex. So we might even be a little bit light on Cooper Kupp. Everyone is excited to play him. I think if you're looking to find a fade on Kupp, it's like you said, it's not so much that he fails. It's just that he doesn't do enough to necessarily separate from these mid-tier guys. And then you get the salary relief from somebody like Odell, who maybe scores 16, but Kupp only gets 19 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So when I'm looking to find a fade on Kupp, it's most likely I'm still going to be maxing out my salary because I'm just hoping that the 13K is just too much to find its way into winning lineups. I'm not banking on him necessarily failing, but I'm trying to prioritize kind of some of these mid-tier guys like Odell and Van Jefferson and a couple of guys on the Cardinals side that have that upside of 15, 20, 25, but just do enough to keep close to Kupp to land in winning lineups ahead of him in that 13K price tag.
One guy that I know people should be thinking about, I think, is Ben Skowronek, because Ben Skowronek actually like shows up and runs routes even when the team is healthy. And yeah, the floor here is like stone cold zero. Like there's a chance they just go straight with Odell, Van, and Cooper Kupp. I do think Skowronek can get, I don't know, 6 to 10 routes off in this game, and at 1,200, like that could be enough there. Skowronek makes play. I just wanted to bring that up there. I mean, absolute stone cold zero floor, but it's hard, man. There's not many punt dust balls. We'll get to the Arizona ones here in a second. There's more options, but specifically on the Rams, like there's not that many cheap ways to go. Like they even priced up Cam Akers, like Van and Odell aren't cheap. So yeah, it's hard to get Rams stacks in, if you know what I mean. Anything else on Rams wide receivers?
Yeah, to your point on Skowronek, he's playing enough to be in our player pool for sure, playing on like 25.7% of snaps. He's got a 6% target share. That might be one of those things that is just enough, a couple of catches if he's the one that falls in the end zone, or if it just works out from a salary perspective. But yeah, it's really thin. Usually we have guys in that 1,000, 2,000, even cheaper range that we can at least mention. It's Skowronek, and then it's one guy on the Cardinal side, and that's really it. We don't have a whole lot of value. So when you start thinking through like 2v2s and 3v3s that involve Kupp and some of these cheap guys, you can start to see why it's a little bit more appealing to play these, doubling up on that 6 to 7K range as opposed to trying to find these pure punts.
Where people are going to look for value, I think, will be with Arizona, because you get Antoine Wesley in here. And by the way, I don't really think Antoine Wesley can play, man. Like, and this is like a classic fade, like underpriced, certainly going to be massively owned. We could even be light here at 31%, maybe, and just not a good player, right? And so like he's playing a version of the DeAndre Hopkins role. I get that at 1,800, but man, like seems like a really good fade. It's just I don't know how to make teams work if I fade him. Like if you're running through optimals, like Antoine West is going to get into like every lineup because you're trying to make the expensive guys work, and he's the best punt. So this is tough. What do you think about Antoine Wesley and handling him tonight?
Yeah, I ran our optimal again before the show started. 300 lineups, and Antoine Wesley was in 194 in the flex, and 22 as our captain. So we're definitely light on the projected ownership there, 31%. This is undoubtedly going to be one of those plays that when we flip, it's 40, 45% maybe. He just makes everything work. He is underpriced. He is an absolute smash in cash games to make everything work, but obvious tournament fade. Again, he's kind of going to go hand in hand with Kupp. So I even think that I would go as far as to say if I'm playing a lineup with Cooper Kupp, I would exclude Antoine Wesley just to avoid that combination. Once you start doing that, you've got Kupp, Wesley. You're likely playing Stafford in that team alongside Kupp. You just really back yourself into a corner on trying to find lineups that aren't heavily duplicated. So yeah, I think just from the jump that Wesley is a very obvious fade.
Breaking news into the show. As expected, as we have projected, shout out to us, James Conner, Chase Edmonds, and Rondale Moore are all active. Conner, Chase, and Rondale are all active. The Rondale stuff, coming off injury and had a horrible role to begin with, I don't really like, he will need to take a bubble screen to the house to pay off, like, period. And like, that's not something I really want to bet on. I know that he's going to be very, very, very lightly owned. If Rondale Moore beats me, he beats me. I could see it in the lottos and the mass multi-entry stuff, but in like smaller field stuff, I think Rondale is probably a fade for me. It's just so hard for him to get there. But any thoughts on Rondale, and then anything on Kirk and AJ Green?
Yeah, I think to that point, and like looking for low-owned guys that we can mix into lineups, especially in large field, it's setting up so much more obvious for me is just trying to create combinations of players that aren't necessarily low-owned, but will be low-owned together, as opposed to just trying to find that Rondale Moore bubble screen that he takes to the house. I would rather fade a 75% owned Cooper Kupp and get two guys like Odo Beckham and Van Jefferson who are actually going to be out there and can be targeted, as opposed to trying to find that 7% owned Rondale Moore. So I'm just thinking in macro terms. I'm thinking through combination of players or players at least that I'm fading that will be low owned when combined together. As far as Kirk and Green, and we can even talk about Zach Ertz, who has become a Kyler Murray favorite now. These guys are all very appealing to me. The price tag set up well. I think that they've got some upside there. at their price tags to come close to guys like Kupp and Kyler and Stafford. Zach Ertz has just been the target volume has been absurd, and he's a little bit cheaper than Christian Kirk. I think Ertz is going to be a popular play tonight as well. I think he sets up as a really good cash play too. But these type of guys that have 2 touchdown upside that have been being used near the red zone, near the goal line, are the type of plays that I'm targeting tonight.
Yeah, it's tough on Ertz. I mean, the 8 out is going to be low, yards after catch is going to be low, but it's very clear that like in this scheme, he is the number one target. Like Zach Ertz is really, really likely to see 7, 8, 9 targets on at 6,200. Obviously, that's a print fest, but I don't think you're not likely to get big plays out of Zach Ertz, big game breaking plays. I'm not sure you are out of AJ Green either. Though AJ Green, they do give some vertical shots too every game for sure. Christian Kirk had such a bad game in week 18. I don't think that really affect his ownership here, though. I mean, Christian Kirk is in a great spot. I mean, I know he's one of Silva's favorite plays on the slate. Very clear the field is on it as well. 38% total ownership there we have projected. Rams tight ends. Higbee had a breakout game last time out. I was optimistic on Higbee going into the season. Frustrated me so hard. But as you can see, he's back up earning more and more targets lately, playing more and more than he used to lately. And so I think in this game, you could see Tyler Higbee playing 100% of the snaps. I'm super interested in him at 5,400, especially if everybody's going to be playing Ertz. What do you think about Higbee?
Yeah, really cheap. The $5,400 price tag is pretty nice. I think he's just $200 more expensive than Van Jefferson. Has been targeted more of late and has kind of that 2 touchdown upside that we've talked about. And another guy like Ertz that probably isn't going to get there in the yardage total, probably not going to get there in the reception total, but is a guy that is utilized near the red zone, near the goal line, and has that kind of touchdown upside.
Yeah. Keith is really going outside the box here. This is the King GPP bro line of thinking. I don't know about taking a 0 with a minimum punt on purpose to be different viable. That's not viable. It's leaving $1,000 of salary on the table and still making a good team. That's viable, but purposely taking a 0 is not going to be viable. Keith, we're going to need points from all our spots. All right. I ask you every time we do the show. Kicker and defense, are they viable? To what extent? And how are you handling this ridiculous positions tonight?
Yeah, I think we start with kickers because we know that in high total games, they have a chance of getting there. A couple field goals, couple extra points could be enough. If you get double-digit points out of, $4,000, $4,200 kicker tonight, I think you're in really, really good shape. And shout out to the Leone and the projections team. I think we do a really good job of accounting for just how much kickers contribute to their team's implied total. You see them often under-projected throughout the industry, and they come in with fairly low ownership on occasion. And if you get 9, 10, 11, 12 points, that could be enough tonight with just the way the slate sets up and there being pretty limited value. On the defensive side, it's obviously very random. We're not very good at projecting defensive performances or identifying outliers, but they're going to come with pretty low ownership tonight. And on a slate that doesn't offer very many options that are low owned, I'm actively targeting these guys just as a way to get different. I don't have any problem playing them against my opposing team captain. So, playing Cardinals defense with Kupp and the captain is one way to get different. And Kyler with the Rams defense, if he throws a pick 6, then you're in good shape there too. So don't ignore these positions just because they're tough to project. I think that they set up pretty well tonight.
Jones wants to know both kickers in the same lineup. I don't know if you've really dug deep on this in your Virginity State, but what do you think about both kickers in the same lineup and specific to tonight?
It's pretty infrequent that you get both kickers in the same lineup. And I just look at top 1% to get a larger sample of large field tournament lineups. So looking at top 1% lineups, very unlikely that both land in an optimal lineup. But the only rule that I specifically set when it comes to like these specialists is max 2 of kickers and DST. So I'd be okay having both kickers, but I just wouldn't include a defense in that lineup, for example.
All right, you guys can start getting in some questions. We'll do about 5 minutes of questions here if you guys have any before we get to the flag plant portion of the program. Let's see. Den. Shout out to Den, who's been crushing and winning a ton in Showdown. He said he would simply rather go broke than play a defense. I think the line is you'd rather go broke than play defense and captain, right? I don't think playing a defense is that bad, but playing defense and captain is where Cody wants to off himself, right?
Yeah, captain defense is problematic. You can play defenses in the flex all you want. Just don't do that in captain. No need for it.
Okay. Jefferson or OBJ straight up. I think given health, given God-given talent, given a little bit better role lately, I'll go with OBJ. But I don't think it's like a slam dunk by any sense. But I'll go with OBJ over Van tonight. For me, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. Ignoring price and ownership, it would be OBJ for me. There's been some negativity surrounding Jefferson lately, and it's warranted. He's struggled. The box scores have been ugly, but I think Jefferson's going to be pretty low on tonight.
I think we found Tunshi's burner here. It's Jermaine Dorsey. He says, "Can we see the FanDuel projections, fellas?" Yes, for my FanDuel bros out there. Yes. Again, for people just tuning in, we are not sure. Actually, we're skeptical that the FanDuel game, the way it's set up, is actually beatable in the long run. So that's why we don't spend too much time talking about it. It's just not that interesting of a game. But yeah, there's some FanDuel projections for you. All right. Connor with Murray. Okay. I think that's okay. In strict pass downs, I expect it to be Chase Edmonds, but on early downs, Kyler will check down to Connor, and I think that's okay. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm okay having Connor and Murray. You're just hoping that they scoop up, all of the team's touchdown production, obviously.
Chase Edmonds versus Ertz tonight. Chase Edmonds versus Ertz. God, I can't believe we're even having this conversation, but go ahead.
Yeah, it's a little bit different of a price point. I think if you've got the money, I would prefer to pay up for Ertz and not try to deal with the Cardinals rug pull at running back. But Edmonds is certainly a strong value tonight as well.
One thing I'll say on the Connor stuff and the Chase stuff, really, if either one aggravates, like the other one could really break the slate, and they're both dealing with injuries. And so, somebody pops Connor in the ribs or something happens to Edmonds' foot or whatever he's dealing with, it's going to break the slate. And so I think that it's interesting to at least think through. What about kickers in the captain? We said no defense in the captain. What about kickers in the captain spot?
It's even more thin than defense captain, surprisingly enough. So I would not have a kicker in my captain tonight.
Edmonds or Sony? I think that's Sony for me. What do you think?
Yeah, Sony for me.
In a matchup of two dust balls, Odell versus AJ Green. God, I think Odell, but man, I'm not fist pumping it in.
Yeah, so here's the thing with AJ Green. He's going to be probably the lowest owned Cardinals pass catcher tonight, and his target totals have been all over the place lately. He's gone from 10, 8, 3, 6, 9. And when we get these up and down target volume games from someone like AJ Green, I would much rather play him when he's going to be low owned as opposed to being more popular. So I think AJ Green might be one of those differentiators on the Cardinal side at low ownership.
Yeah, Kyle, shout out to Kyle doing great thumbnails and everything else for us. He says playing these teams to struggle on offense, is that the right way to zag versus the market? I do think, I said it on the shows we did last week. Like, I think both San Francisco and Dallas are better than these teams. Like, I think that they're straight up are. I don't know if they're going to struggle necessarily in the way these offenses interact with each other, but I think they're both a little bit overrated. So if you want to play some narrative where the game ends like 21-17 or something like that, like, I'm okay with that. I'm not sure exactly how you would play that. You would probably play it, I guess, with defenses in your lineups. But yeah, well, what do you think about that? If you have a read that the game's going to be low scoring and offenses are going to struggle, how would you play that in Showdown?
Yeah, I think you're just trying to maximize raw points at that point. With you're probably jamming in Kupp. If the game's low scoring, I don't see how Kupp wouldn't be one of the top 6 scorers. When these games get super high scoring and you have multiple touchdowns and multiple guys catching long passes and things like that, that's when players like Odell and Christian Kirk and those types can compete with someone who has just the sheer volume of Kupp. But I don't think that if this is super low scoring, you want to find a fade on somebody like Kupp. And then, yeah, jamming in defenses. Maybe these teams stall out in the red zone. Maybe you get the kickers. I think prioritizing those positions in a low scoring game environment would be sharp.
Gerald asked suggestions to getting different. So, if you want to play this slate in a way in which you don't often win, but what do you win when you win? Going for a full Cooper Kupp fade, I think is one way to do it. We have 75%, could be even higher than that 18% captain if he ends up not part of the optimal. It doesn't have to be, again, he could have 9 catches for 110 yards and no touchdowns. That's a pretty good game. I don't think will be in the optimal. So yeah, I don't know. Any other ideas for Gerald?
Yeah, exactly. I think this slate is so much more about getting different from a macro perspective as opposed to just trying to find that one low-owned dart throw that gets you there. So like I mentioned before, just thinking through combinations of players that aren't necessarily low-owned by themselves, but will be low-owned together. Kyler Captain with the Rams defense, Cooper Kupp with the Cardinals defense, Cooper Kupp without Matthew Stafford. Things like that can theoretically happen in a football game. But when put in a lineup, won't be highly owned together.
Paul says large field GPP with one entry, is it best to just go 5-1 or 1-5? I always like the 5-1 and 1-5 stuff. I know it doesn't hit that often, but when it hits, not very many other people have it. What do you think about 5-1 or 1-5 tonight?
Yeah, going to be really, really contrarian on both sides tonight. So if you have a lean that this game gets sideways in one way or another, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that especially on the 1-5 side, you can just soak up all of that production from the Rams side with Cooper Kupp and just play 5 Cardinals. We know 2-4 is going to be popular, but I don't think people will extend themselves too much to the 1-5 side. So I love that.
Ryan says, can we get Adam some Zantac for his heartburn hiccups, buddy? Each day I'm alive, it's a miracle. All right, I'm on death's door here. Okay. Gerald says Higbee a captain. Thoughts? You're gonna need 2 touchdowns, I think, but certainly possible. I mean, he's very much a red zone threat. Mike says we need some sub 2K locks. I don't know what to tell you, buddy.
They're thin.
Wrong slate.
Like that's the thing. Skowronek is a better sub 2K play than Antoine Wesley, and he's about it. It gets really, really, really thin after that.
By the way, Cody is referring to game theory bros. We're not actually saying that Antoine Wesley is likely to be outscored by Ben Skowronek for the game theory bros, though. All right. Why bring back Akers if not to play him more here? Yeah, I think it's good to have a change of pace back. I mean, I think it's good, but I still think Sony will handle the overall majority of work. Let's take a quick 6-gamer here before we do the flag plans. 6 game, he needs ceiling, Kyler Higbee or Stafford Ertz. Kyler Higbee or Stafford Ertz. Yeah, I think if you need ceiling, Kyler Higbee makes sense. I might try to correlate, though. If you really need ceiling, you could go, if you could fit it, Kyler Ertz, but you probably can't fit it, or Stafford Higbee. All right. Let's get to the flag plant portion of the program. This is where the plants, they will be flagged. Cody, go ahead.
All right. I'm banking on some touchdown luck, some touchdown efficiency from a guy who has long been dust, but has reemerged as the Cardinals' go-to target. Zach Ertz, 2 touchdowns tonight, optimal captain.
Okay. Zach Ertz, optimal captain. I am going to go a little bit more off the board. Slightly less projected captain ownership. I'm going to go with a man who allegedly likes to have women shit on his chest. Allegedly. I'm going to go with a man who was maybe, I don't want to say luckiest, but no one turned 5-yard slants into more 90-yard touchdowns than Odell Beckham did in the first couple years of his career. With Van Jefferson maybe a little banged up, with the Cardinals doing everything they can, everything to try to take out Cooper Kupp. One vintage Odell game here on a national stage on Monday Night Football, my arch nemesis for a very long time. Odell, the scat man himself, is going to be my flag plan. And that's going to do it for this showdown analysis. Enjoy the corporate greed of the NFL tonight. Everybody got an island game on Monday night. Everybody got it. I'm sure everybody's excited about it, except the team who wins, who will be on a short week next week. But I digress. Good luck tonight. For Cody, for producer Adam, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.